Hey, so I was looking at this list last night from Spotrac of Seahawks free agents, and we talked about Leonard Williams. Here's the complete list for listeners who aren't aware of everybody else. So you got Leonard Williams, Bobby Wagner, Drew Lock, Phil Haynes, Devin Bush, Noah Fant, Jordan Brooks, Evan Brown, Darrell Taylor, Mario Edwards, Damian Lewis, Colby Parkinson, DJ Dallas, Michael Jackson, Jake Curran, Miles Adams, and then some guys you've never heard of. Yeah. Ty Okada, Patrick O'Connell, Brady Russell. Those are.
What about that Joshua guy?
Joshua Onajogu.
Nice work, Bob. Nice work.
Onujiogu.
I saw it when we got to that. When we got to that, when I was reading along, and I'm like, yeah, I would skip that one.
That's where I decided to tap out, Dave. but of this list, and again, we touched on Leonard Williams. Is there anybody you look at and say you've got to bring this guy back?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I'm hitting Drew Lock and going, yeah, that's pretty important. We went through that last year. We had a thing where it was like, well, this guy has to be back. This guy, I don't care. And then these guys, we'll see you later.
Yeah.
And then we're doing the exercise. It's like, you got to fill out a roster. I mean, there are some guys like Drew Lock that you look at, but no, I mean, I think the two biggest names are, what you talked about, Leonard Williams and Jordan Brooks. Because Bobby Wagner's on that list. It's not.
And Devin Bush, yeah.
Yeah, it's not absolutely crucial, I don't think, for him. And then, yeah, Devin Bush. And I'm really curious, if they don't do Brooks, we're talking about a whole new group of linebackers that are going to come in here, whether they're trying to get it in the draft or through free agency.
Combo of draft and free agency. Maybe they bring Patrick Queen over, perhaps. They've got ties with McDonald. But back to Jordan Brooks, because he's a guy you've championed and talked about, listen, this guy's just always in the right spot. He always makes the right decision. He's not the splash guy. He's not making those splash plays. He just seems to be a solid guy. Is he easily improved upon, where if he goes elsewhere, do you feel like, okay, you can find that in somebody else? Or do you feel like he's got a somewhat unique set of skills that is going to be hard to duplicate? How do you view him? Doing the right thing all the time is awesome, but
yeah,
are there a lot of guys who will do the right thing? Do you feel like that's a rarity that you need to hang on to?
Well, if you look at those two markers that you just laid out, I think it's closer. He's closer to being like the special guy that you can't do without, just because leadership and things like that. And he's got kind of that quiet leadership. We don't hear him down on the field, but he's kind of a quiet guy. But he's started to make plays. And I think last time we had Moyer on, he was talking about it, and I totally agree. Really good in coverage, and that's really important. And, and a lot of times we judge linebackers based on what they do against the run. Are they being physical? Are they stepping up and taking on blocks and things like that? But, just some of the nuances in the pass game are difficult for linebackers, especially when you're dropping back in zone, because there's all kinds of things that are going on behind you, and sometimes what's in front of you tells what's going on behind you, and you can't take a peek constantly. So I think he's gotten really good that way. And as I said, he's starting to make plays. He had 4.5 sacks this year, and the last 3 years he had 2. Didn't have anything his rookie year. He got his pick finally. Got himself a pick 6. He forced a fumble, picked up a fumble. I mean, he's starting to make that. So I think this is kind of his deal. And I think if you get him, this year is going to be his big year. And I think if you can get him into that kind of defense and running it, I think he's really important. And if I had to pick between him and Leonard Williams, I'm afraid I'd take Brooks.
Really?
Yeah. Because, now the injury part of it aside, right? Now, if he's entirely healthy, because it's the same discussion we have about Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
If he's not healthy, you can't do anything with him.
Well, how did he look when he came back to you this year?
Brooks?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I thought he played, like, he stood out to me in the Giant game on Monday night. That was the one where he picked up a fumble. And sometimes you can tell something just off of a couple of plays. When he got that ball in his hand and, scored on the game it was on Thanksgiving against San Francisco, got the pick 6. It was only 12 yards, but still, just you see that he's starting to play more free. And he's starting to kind of go beyond like just what you're taught and what your assignments. You start playing outside of that, and you have your own kind of style. And to me, Jordan Brooks has that. So
I mean, pretty impressive that he comes off that knee injury and plays 16 games this year.
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Totally.
And he, to you, looked the same in terms of planning, cutting, stopping, things we've talked about where Jamal, he can get going. Stopping is problematic based on that injury.
Yeah.
But you didn't see any lack of, I don't know, just what he had before. He looked the same as he did before physically.
Yeah, it looked like he didn't have a surgery in the offseason. And the thing is, you can't make those kinds of plays that I was just describing unless you are fully confident. And for him to have kind of that breakout year on the year that he was rehabbing his knee, it's pretty amazing. But, I mean, look, maybe they have this whole plan of bringing Patrick Queen in, talked about that. If you brought Brooks back, those two guys together really could be the foundation. They have Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen there in Baltimore, and those guys are really important to that defense. So I don't think it's going to be Bobby Wagner, and I really think that it's going to be, Jordan Brooks is going to be a big part of what they're doing. Now, if obviously if he's not ready next year, then we'll have to go somewhere else, whether it's the draft or free agency. But I'll be very curious to see what happens at that position, because for the first time in a long time, all of a sudden you're kind of desperate.
Yeah.
When they drafted Jordan Brooks, I was like, why'd they draft him? They've got KJ and Bobby, and then that was a position that they just didn't really need. But it takes a lot for me to say I would pick him over Leonard Williams, because I think Leonard Williams is really important. My only hesitation with him is that I'm not sure if he's exactly the kind of guy that Mike Macdonald would want in his defense. If he's like, oh man, I see how talented he is, love the way he plays, everything, but he's just not our guy. I seriously doubt that.
You think John would be back there going, yeah, but we gave up a second rounder for him. Are you sure he doesn't fit?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. I would not be surprised if they had that discussion like before they even hired Mike Macdonald. I mean, I think
that was part of the interviews with these guys.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, like hey, let me see where we are on defense and the scheme and things like that. What do you think about this guy? Mm-hmm. So, and I wouldn't put it past him to break out the film and start going through that. And I mean, that had to have been a part of it. Part of it's getting to know him, getting to figure out his leadership role, all that. But ultimately, it comes down to the players.